The ring is full of workers and legends. The crowd is into what they're doing. You can hear their excitement. When the brawl breaks out, their volume goes up. Devoid of greater context and long-term storytelling, what you're seeing here is professional wrestling working as intended. Action is occurring, and entertainment is being derived from it. Success. And then the lights go out, and then an interloper enters, his arrival backed by music as mediocre as his walkout itself. His presence engulfs the proceedings like a dense fog. Emphasis on dense. As he arrives, crowd interest exits, as all life in the audience is introduced to the withering radiation of a neutron star of total non-personality, dying as shriveled gray husks. With only a few small steps from a man, this individual has performed a giant leap in killing the climax of a wrestling show. This ring full of workers and legends looks on, attempting to sell the shock of this trespasser's appearance. They try their hardest, and though their individual efforts are laudable, their great combined strength cannot move this massive stone of anti-charisma. Tito Ortiz has killed the segment dead to go off the air on television. He did it just by standing there. Tito is just standing there.
Tito is just standing there.
He's just standing there. He's just standing there. Following the demise of WCW in early 2001, the race was on for a North American promotion to fill the power vacuum and prevent Vince McMahon's impending monopoly on televised professional wrestling. If you're a longtime fan of wrestling, you know how well that went. This doesn't mean that there haven't been a number of challengers to the throne in the last 20 years, with recent newcomer All Elite Wrestling being the first to gain a foothold on a non-niche cable channel and actually force WWE to compete. With their arrival, collaboration between wrestling companies has been something we've been seeing once again, such as when AEW champion Kenny Omega showed up being managed by Impact Wrestling Vice President Don Callis. Depending on who you are and how you look at wrestling, you can either view this as a big deal in either the sarcastic or the sincere sense. Me, I see it as a sincerely big deal, as someone who wants to see more interpromotional content in wrestling, from something as big as an interpromotional card to something as small as seeing one company's belt on another company's show. Some can argue that this can make a company seem smaller than it could seem by putting it up against the larger backdrop of the wrestling world. But as somebody who knows about the greater wrestling world, I'm someone who wants to see that. So as such, AEW and Impact tying into one another is something I see as a positive. Especially considering that Impact themselves are the previous big alternative to WWE, a company that is, in its current state, pretty much unrecognizable from the state they were in back when they started. Back when they were called TNA, Total Non-Stop Action, and certainly not a name trying to grab audience attention by suggesting that they have the titty. TNA is a company that could very easily be summed up as a hot mess. And I say this as somebody who actually got a fair bit of enjoyment out of the company. Call me a sucker for underdog creators. But actually it was more the fact that for a time, TNA's X Division Wrestling was fire hot enough to rival the goddamn sun. And then it fell victim to TNA.exe. TNA has a great number of historically bad moments, and I'll say that people like to focus on that with a good reason. For their time, and even still today, these moments dwell at the absolute bottom, the total nadir of wrestling. In no way will I ever try to claim that the bad in TNA was actually gold, because it wasn't. What I will say is that because folks have a tendency to harp on its history of bad for the obvious funsies to be had in doing that, people also get the idea in their head that there was absolutely no good in TNA. And that's wrong. The truth is that while a lot of the writing in TNA Impact was complete direct due to the presence of individuals on the booking team, there was a lot of talent on the roster, which put a lot of entertainment in the ring. They also had a cool six-sided ring gimmick, which made them visually distinct and gave matches a new physical element. You know, up until these assholes showed up and declared that real wrestling shows need to put away the toys. Got rid of it. You know, That guy. The human action figure, the man made of orange plastic. Burt Reynolds. Right there, you see him? Fuck that guy! Anyway, fact of the matter is, there's a whole damn variety pack worth of stories to tell about TNA, and most of them, they're the brands doctors tell you not to give to kids due to the presence of unhealthy chemicals. In this video, though, we are talking about the climax to the episode of Impact Wrestling that took place on... So you'll forgive me for beginning the narrative in medias res, but as this is the nature of professional wrestling, if I were to start at the beginning of this storyline, we'd be here a lot longer than we're already going to be. I'll just break it down simply. These folks in the ring, this is the Main Event Mafia, a group that's existed in a couple of incarnations through the years within TNA. I'd just like to point out, a prior version of the MEM included one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. That's right, you know him, you love him, you recoil in horror whenever somebody hands him a live microphone. It's Scott Steiner!
I'm doing hemming! So you got a 25% and piss at beating me! Hit the deck!
The group on the ramp is the Heels, the Aces and Eights. The stable that is, by and large, considered a missed opportunity, something that could have been a lot better, but wasn't. Like the rest of TNA, though, it did have some secret gold in it.
Beneath those masks, when we pulled them off, we found some of the most ugly visages ever thought up by man. Ugly. I bring this. Possibly the only substance on earth that makes you palatable to the human eye. And I lay this to rest in your memoriam. We really shouldn't waste these. These are really, they're nice. They're cold right now, so we should just get going. What they want. Yeah, no.
Like a lot of the work put in by the former Bubba Ray Dudley, Bully Ray. Bully Ray is the president of the Aces and Eights, and he's also our sir not appearing in this film. And you see right there, there's his kayfabe brother Devon, also in the club. Together, those two were the legendary Dudley Boys, a highly decorated tag team known for their incendiary riot-baiting promos.
Come on, you fat, bald motherfucker! How did he know his name?
Crushing yet agile in-ring style, and their famous team finisher, the Dudley Death Drop, better known as the 3D. To this day, this move is still protected. To this day, people still have reverence for how fucking cool the 3D is. Why wouldn't they? Just look at it! Meanwhile, across the ring in the MEM stands the man called Sting. An individual who has reached the highest heights in the sport, leaving his mark on the world of high-flying wrestling. A guy who once managed to get over just by sitting up in the rafters of show venues for a literal year. Just on the off chance that this show might finally do something. Alongside him is Kurt Angle, a legitimate Olympic gold medalist wrestler, an explosive and technical in-ring performer who can make even his basic arsenal look as though he's styling on an opponent. A man who can confidently project a character that ranges from unhinged wrestling lunatic to idiot cornball in a tiny cowboy hat. These two men know the weight of big belts. With him is former UFC and Pride champion Quentin Rampage Jackson, an individual whose entire career has been built around an all-in, all-round fighting acumen and his anarchic goofball persona. If you don't know Quentin Jackson, know that Rampage is an extremely fitting nickname for this man, because he's basically a smiling, unleashed id. Oh, hey, and look, there is Samoa Joe, an individual who was at one time the biggest name in independent wrestling. A hard-hitting but fast-moving bruiser known for simply trash compacting smaller opponents in brutal sprint matches. This man legitimately does the Kadiku Buster as his finisher. That's his style.
Joe has him up for the muscle buster, and it connects!
And then right there, that's Magnus, who now goes as the national treasure Nick Aldis. Despite having something of a bumpy start in TNA, Aldis has grown over the years to be the sort of old-school wrestling personality that could pull off the feat of being a main eventer in the past. A guy who backs up his in-ring solidity with the fact that he's a handsome devil and a charisma fountain. Of course they put the NWA title on this guy, why wouldn't they? And of course, I don't want to discount the efforts of these guys here. I'm not here to roast their nuts by damning them to being unmentioned, that just because these dudes failed to achieve superstardom or even, stardom, their efforts are somehow meaningless. Their effort was not meaningless, it had purpose, it served a use, and was followed through upon honestly. Okay, I might still roast the nuts of Mr. Anderson. Anderson. Because, that dude is an endless source of nut roast.
Thank God I'm in it!
Nah, too much of a digression. Never mind. I could go into the finer points of the storyline here, but it can pretty easily be reduced, as this is one of those cases where it's all a bunch of words leading up to the face smashing and body flinging. The short version, the MEM dislikes the presence of nasty man bikers, aces, and eights, and is working in tandem with one another to take Impact's titles off the villainous outlaws, then get them fired entirely by challenging them to loser leaves town matches. Reasonable enough, out of context the finer points, which could be pretty dumb. The aces and eights, like I said, could have been a lot cooler, but they just weren't. Sorry. Anyway, with this sort of tension, it's only inevitable that a face-to-face conflict would turn into a scrap, which is exactly what occurs. Like I said at the front of this video, this is the part that really works of this segment. Devoid of the greater context, when you see happy and cheering fans, it means you're doing something right. You're engaging people enough that they want to cheer. Yes, doing something right is not doing everything right, but a positive reaction is a positive reaction, especially when this is the climax of the show. To carry it off the airwaves, a brawl stemming out of the declaration of a 5-on-5 tag team match to occur live on pay-per-view, where the man who takes the fall is fired from the company. This is good. This is building interest in the premium version of your product that people pay for, on the free version they can just tune into on TV. Wrestling! And then the lights go out. And then the segment's sudden death begins.
5-on-5 main event mafia against aces and eights. We are going to have a fight at hardcore. What the hell? Wow. August 1 warning. Identity revealed as the MMA legend Tito Ortiz.
What the hell is that?
Now I will put my hand to any sort of holy book you want to put in front of me, that I might be seen to be under oath by the deity of your choice, to tell only the truth when I say I did not edit a single second of that clip. All I did was isolate the moment in time. Everything that you saw from the very end of the title card to the beginning of me talking, that went to air. That was on TV. It looks like a fucking Tim and Eric sketch. From out of deep obscurity lumbers the smuggest thumb you've ever seen. It's none other than the Huntington Beach bad boy Tito Ortiz, a man who was at one time the face of mixed martial arts. A man well known for his brash antics towards both his opponents and their fight camps, he exemplified the counterculture vibe of early MMA at its height, both before and after it crossed over to mainstream and began its evolution into a more respected sport. With that evolution in time came the forces that removed him from the title picture and the spotlight. But the guy still remained, and still to this day remains, a part of the sport. He's also known for being really dumb.
Now it's about my kids. I want to outlive my children. Of course, 100%. And I just look at it as just, I take care of myself.
Really, really dumb.
I'm only 43 years old. I'm an old mature. I matured old. Very fast, but at the same time, my body hasn't matured great, just because of my father's really old. My father's 80 years old. My grandmother's 100 years old.
Like, just alarmingly so.
So I look up and I simply say, "Hey Tito, what are you doing in Portland?" And to this day, he's never responded. He began shaking his head and he began like bumbling his words. And he walked off, and I remember watching him staring at right on the streets and watching him going, Tito, that wasn't meant as a trick question.
Which means that, unfortunately, it seems somebody overestimated his drawing power in 2013's world of professional wrestling. Because with his phallus-like waddlings,
Wow.
a tidal wave of communal ennui follows and floods the seating area. Madame de Stael said that in life, one must choose between boredom and suffering. To that, I present both in one body. Tito is just standing there. He's just standing there. He's sucking the life out of the entire room just by standing there.
Standing there.
Behold the visages of people trying. Of some people trying. Steve Borden, is a man who is no stranger to iconic moments. Because one of the man's nicknames is the Icon. He's doing his damnedest to sell the moment, to put across that a veteran among veterans has been rendered speechless. Brother Devon manages to portray actual fear in this brief glance of the camera. Nux of the Aces and Eights is looking on like a man who has suddenly got some great and terrible obstacle in his way, blocking his one point of egress, as if a flaming semi-truck fell through the ceiling and crushed the ramp. All the while Kurt Angle looks on, like a predator whose territory is being challenged. Tito's just standing there. Rampage Jackson is a man whose first home is MMA, but he also understands the pageantry of professional wrestling, the call and response of its people's theater aspects. He knows that when somebody does something, you respond as your character would, as your character should. Except that Rampage is doing his best to craft a response to Tito, who is just standing there, and not actually doing anything, except looking like a man who never got spanked by Randy Couture. Looking every bit like a man whose strategy against Chuck Liddell could be simplified as block fist with face. Through eyes like those on a potato, Ortiz looks on as only he can do. Dumbly. With confidence.
He's just standing there.
That's not what you want to see during a big debut. Nor is this. And definitely not this. But back to the ring. Samoa Joe is an individual who is specifically really good with his facial expressions, and here we see why. In him, you can see tough guy swagger that nonetheless has been rattled. He's trying to compensate for it, but he's shook. This is good acting. But unfortunately, it's in service to the debut of Tito Ortiz, who is just standing there. Even the lesser-most performers in this group, the team of Wes Briscoe and Garrett Bischoff, put a genuine effort toward their working at Tito's arrival. Briscoe looks like he's crying, which might be an overreaction, but at the same time, I respect the hustle. Save only for the fact that he's crying at a man who is just standing there.
Standing there.
Which makes us seem all the more ridiculous.
What are you guys doing? It's Tito Ortiz. It's not even a smart guy with muscles.
You start to get the picture as to why I find this moment in time so amazing. Had you no clue as to the context of professional wrestling and mixed martial arts, you'd look at this and wonder what the big deal was. But with insight, This single minute of actual television time becomes a self-sustaining spiral of pure psychic damage. The sort of thing that can make you laugh until you legitimately hurt for no other reason other than that Tito is just standing there. Note that this laughter is not a good sort of laughter because this was not meant to be a joke. This was the payoff to a built reveal. See, this is Tito's big interjection into the storyline, and with it, his debut as rival to Rampage Jackson. In this climactic moment, he has revealed himself to be the mystery wrestler teased by TNA's #August1 warning campaign. This was an attempt at cross-promotion with MMA company Bellator, who had booked a Jackson vs. Ortiz match at an upcoming card. In Tito's emergence, he effectively took the heat both the Impact storyline and the Bellator match had built up, and placed it in the kind of scientific apparatus you'd use to make solid hydrogen. He took the heat and he rendered it so close to absolute zero, the universe nearly goddamn died! They promoted this moment! 2 companies promoted this moment! Do you people understand now? Don Valentine had to do a move to kill an audience this hard. But Tito is just standing there.
Just standing there.
But now you understand. You see what's happening here. What you're witnessing is the phenomena of all positive response in a room being pulled toward the event horizon of a personality black hole and being played apart to prime ether in the entropy of the bleed space between realities. This is like watching the slime in Ghostbusters 2 move in response to powerful emotion, except in reverse. Tito arrives, the slime stops dancing, the Statue of Liberty stops walking. In the space of 1 minute of absolutely bizarre television time, all the honest effort, the fire, the intensity put forth by these performers, it's rendered meaningless, consumed by the sheer negative quantity within professional wrestling that is Tito Ortiz, who is still just standing there. Standing there. And just like that, we're off air. What? You thought this was going to have a resolution? Maybe next episode. But for all you know, Tito is to this very day still just standing there. I could take the time to explain what happened in the storyline following the August 1 warning episode of Impact. That the 5-on-5 would be delayed because of Kurt Angle checking into rehab, and that AJ Styles would be his mystery replacement, receiving a babyface ovation and pinning Brother Devon with a Styles Clash to win the match, taking him out of TNA. That at the same pay-per-view, Bully Ray would go on to regain the World Championship from Chris Sabin after Mr. Anderson and Tito Ortiz, who did not just stand there, interfered. These are valid things to bring up as points of the aftermath, as is the fact that this whole thing wasn't about propping up the aces and eights, but bringing Ortiz in. One way or another, the aces and eights were on their way out at this point. But that's more detail than I need to go into, because ultimately, this isn't as important as to what we're actually talking about here. What's important is that we've all now witnessed the chilling reality of what can happen when you cast a role poorly. What happens when someone vastly overestimates their ability to be an impact player? You can never be sure with professional wrestling, because this is a form of entertainment where somehow Ralphus got over. But if an old toothless guy who was a truck driver for WCW has some baffling star power and you find yourself having to go with it, then we just have to deal with the horrifying counterbalance to such felicity. Namely, that you can have an individual who packs the muscle in the background, yet still evokes such a non-reaction it would have literally been a better use of the money you spent just to have them stay at home and not actually wrestle on your wrestling show. Tell me that's not terrifying. This is the incredible double-edged sword of professional wrestling, that it lives and dies on crowd response, and that there is no such thing as a sure thing. We've seen it before with individuals who got over above the people they were supposed to get over. If the company is generally smart, they'll go with the flow and make the money they can with this jarred lightning. But where there exists this opportunity, this ability for a nothing to become a big, big something, then you have to accept that just as often, the opposite can occur, with an equally dramatic, yet astonishingly terrible effect. Hard work and effort devoured and obliterated through a void of entertainment, shaped like a big dumb Tito is just standing there!